Jenny, if you allow me, always when you see that you're the final presenter in a program, you feel like, oh, there we go. So I propose that we stand up, give Christina a standing ovation to wake ourselves up and have 15 more minutes.
I can't stand up.
I hope that doesn't hire the expectations.
It does definitely.
It's just that we're awake.
Oh, well, on the other, so yeah, thank you for this. So my name is Ampatzidou. I'm an architect and urbanist, and I'm doing my PhD in the University of Groningen in the Spatial Sciences department. And the good thing of being last is that I'm actually very new to this debate, so I think my presentation will actually be very simple. And I will be talking about the games. So, of course, the first question is like, is any one of you a gamer? Does any one of you play? What do you play? Like video games, or just like board games with your kids, or?
Board games.
Mario Kart.
Huh?
Mario Kart.
Minecraft.
Okay, yeah, I heard. Yeah. So it's, well, good. Then I hope you recognize a bit of yourselves in this.
Sure.
So basically, I'm doing my PhD in a project called Playing with Urban Complexity that is looking at the use of games in participatory settings for urban planning. And in Groningen, we focus on the topic of energy transition. So what I'm going to do is, like, I will first introduce the game prototype that we have developed and tested in Groningen. I will then tell you a bit like how emergence is discussed in the framework of game design, how we observed, like, share some ideas of how we observe this in our own case, and then a little bit why I think it's very interesting and you should be interested in it too. So yeah, this is Energy Safari. It's our game. The purpose of the game is to communicate some elements of the regional energy transition policy to people and to stimulate some sort of like collaboration and learning among the players. It's a strategy game, so what you have to do is that you assume a certain position and you have to move around the province of Groningen trying to realize 4 different types of energy-related projects. And in order to do that, you have to basically collaborate with other players, so you have to find partners for your project, you need to finance it and get permissions. And you have to do that while you have to deal with like different externalities that come along with. Some are small, like having to deal with your neighbor, or some are very big, like political changes or natural disasters. And then the idea is that you slowly kind of, in this process, you kind of both understand what types of projects you can realize, but also get some information about how this is working within the institutional framework of the specific province. So games are very much discussed in terms of like systems. So you have rules, and these rules, they condition what you are going to do. So, you're playing a video game, you're shooting somebody down, and this allows you to open a door that moves you to the next level. So it's very much, games are very much built around causal relationships between an action and a certain feedback that you get. And this can be thought of as a closed system. So this is sort of like the visualization of our game. So you start and you roll the dice and you move somewhere and like you go on like this. So you can really like think of them as kind of like very closed system of doing this and moving forward or back. But at the same time, games are also like social experiences. Like people come together to play them, and they also interact while playing the game. So you can also think of them as like open systems where players bring in their own kind of like very subjective like beings. There are not many players in the room, but I had a question of if you could name the difference between chess and Final Fantasy. But I guess you cannot.
Okay, cool.
Final Fantasy, it's a game where you basically advance by solving different puzzles and like different riddles and stuff, and then you advance and then you finish it. And then if you want to play the game again, you basically have to solve the same puzzles and like answer the same questions, and then you finish it again. So then you basically have to buy the next edition in order to keep playing. Whereas chess, it plays out differently every time you play the game, even if you do play with the same person. And this is why we are playing chess in its form for like 14 centuries now, because it's always, there is always something new coming out. And in gaming terminology, this is like a game of emergence, and Final Fantasy is a game of progression. You just progress in the game, whereas in chess you don't. So emergence is a very important thing for games, because it basically makes sure that with very simple rules you can have a lot of variation, but it also is a way of ensuring that people will want to play your game again, because every time they play it, they learn something new and they get something new out of it. So, it happens in 3 different ways. So there is this thing called emergent gameplay. So it's like how, in the way of playing the game, like things come out. And this, I think, we can divide in 3 different categories. So it can happen. You can have emergence when in the interactions between different elements in the game. So this is very common when you have, for example, like generative algorithms or different types of simulations within like video games, for example. It can happen when players interact with different elements of the game, so trying to complete like a Super Mario level just by jumping and like not using any other function, so you kind of implement this interaction within with this specific part of the game. But it also happens by the interactions between players with other players. So in online multiplayer games, sometimes you have players who like group together in order to overcome challenges that are a bit more difficult for you as a single person, but you can kind of spontaneously say, yeah, let's do this together because it will be easier for all of us. So I would like to focus on the last 2 ones where players are involved, and I will tell you like 5 cases where I think from our, we played the game around 20 times with different people, and somehow these kind of instances of emergent gameplay were the most common. So the first one has to do with how people would choose their projects. So you had 4 different types of projects, and some players, they really were influenced by their but their own.
I'm not sure, it could be.
It's anonymized. So some players, they were really influenced by their own convictions. So for example, like there was this lady that said like that completely refused to do any biodiesel related projects because she was absolutely convinced that they are really, really bad. This was also very evident, for example, with people from, like policymakers from the municipality, that they were really bringing in their own agendas in the way they were playing the game. But sometimes it was very much influenced by the other players. So when players would go for a specific type of projects, then more players would kind of try to do the same in order to catch up with them. Another thing had to do with finding partners and choosing with who to collaborate, and this was one of the most interesting parts, because there were different rules that came into play sort of spontaneously. One of them was a kind of a first come first serve rule. So if you would say, okay, I want to join your project, and you would say that first, you would automatically be included in the project. But there were also like rules of reciprocity, so I included you in my project, so now I expect you to include me in yours. But there was also a rule of bidding, so people would suddenly say like, oh, I'm going to pay you more if you decide to include me in your project, because of course it was much more profitable in the long term to be part of more projects. So people had an incentive, and they were not always willing to somehow comply with the kind of like basic principle of the game, so to stick to the existing rules. And there are also like different values that these rules represent. So somehow the first come first serve was also perceived as the most fair way because it was like everybody was treated equally, and then the bidding was kind of very much in favor of the project owner because he could make a really huge profit out of like collecting money from all these people who want to join. And then you had this reciprocity rule that was kind of really taking into account the player's behavior within the game. So I would not include a player that blocked my project in the previous round. So it was like very much kind of a very indicative of how decisions were made. Another part of the game required players to answer questions in order to advance. And okay, despite this kind of, that sounds a bit of like a blackmail, it was one of the most collaborative parts of the game. Originally, we assumed that only the project owner would answer these questions, but what happened was that automatically all the project partners and sometimes all the players, they would collaborate to find the correct answer. And if they could not come to a kind of like consensus by like through their knowledge or like their kind of trusting the experts within the group, they would vote. And sometimes, and what was really nice was that there were these joker cards that allowed you to advance, like to overcome this step. And they were really used as a common resource within the group. And there was like and that was like really nice to see that the people were willing to give their own resources to achieve a kind of collective goal, which is to have the project go ahead. And of course, we wanted to test a little bit morality of our players, so we also implemented a bribing mechanic in the game. So you could pay a little bit more to have your project advance. And that was really nice because it created a lot of discussions where, well, some people, of course, they said, no way I'm going to do it. Some people, they were like, yeah, it's just a game, why not? And it also created a lot of discussions on whether actually this is happening or not, and how in reality somebody happened to have a friend within the municipality that helped him get a permit, and it's like, how things work. So it was kind of nice that this kind of stories also surfaced why, negotiating whether you should bribe within the game. And this is a little bit more specific about the role of the municipality, because the municipality and the province were the main institutional actors in providing the permits within the game. So a lot of time there was this discussion on how these institutions in reality inhibit or facilitate the actual projects from happening. So why I think this is important is because games, they are a very popular tool for city making. It's also becoming more and more popular, but it has also been around a lot. So Monopoly was, for example, created as an educational game to explain land use monopolies. And then, of course, later on you started having the first simulation games. And then the World Peace game by Fuller, it was once systems thinking was becoming much more popular, so there was this idea of solving kind of the resource problems on a global scale. It was actually censored because it was thought it was too provocative. And of course, with Forrester's work in urban dynamics, for example, Bill Wright of SimCity, he said he was explicitly inspired by these theories when he made SimCity. But what I'm trying to say with this is that in all this city gaming history, the idea of simulation and modeling has been very strong. It was games were always tools of modeling or simulating urban processes, of building urban processes, and I think that's a little bit unfair because I hope we can all agree that cities are not entities that we actually want to control and design, but they actually evolve, and they evolve also through kind of the social interactions and the behaviors of the people who are involved in this shaping. And what we've learned from looking at how emergent gameplay happened during our game is that basically we learned a lot of things about how our players regard the current energy policy, But also like from the kind of like rules that they devised and implemented, we learned a lot about like what are the values that they take into account and what kind of like parameters they come and play when they are negotiating also among themselves about like real community projects that they are involved in their real lives. So I think there are a few kind of, I have a couple of ideas of where this could be going, and that's where I would really like your feedback on. Because I think games as basically they can create environments where people, where players exchange information even when they act strategically in order to advance their own agenda. So everybody wants to win, but in doing that you also sometimes have to collaborate and have to share information, and that can point to also like different different things that you're doing in the real life. Secondly, that somehow including real people in these planning models, like through gaming, also reminds us that somehow real people make unpredictable and uncertain decisions, and they also have uncertain behaviors, and that's every time it can lead to different results. And then finally, like two things about like the potential of learning. One, that is, even though you sometimes play competitively, like learning happens in a cooperative way during the gameplay, both for the players and for us. And finally, that this can happen within games in both like a kind of direct way through the information that you get about like energy or something. That's my last point. It's really the last one. And
I just think it's funny.
And in a more like open-ended way through the interaction. So that was really the last one. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That wasn't simple, it was just clear. Yes. Okay, commentator. Yeah, please. No,
Yeah, I just have a question
No.
like on...
no. Are you the official?
No.
That's me. Because it's not here. It's not here. It's in the program. It's not in my program.
It is, yes.
It's not in my program. I can show you. It's in yours. Oh yeah, oh yeah. But anyway, I'm not going that much, but I'll be quick. No, thanks for your presentation. It was fun to listen to it, but I also enjoyed reading your paper. Myself, I'm starting to become interested in gaming and actually as an educational tool, but so far I've been not really good at developing games. So that's, first of all, I could really benefit from your experience in that. Mm-hmm. But also reading your paper was already like clarifying a lot about, you know, when you use games and how can you use them, different kinds of games that there are. I have two questions or two thoughts that I would like to share. The first one is, at a certain point you said in your paper, I hope I understood it in the right way, but you said the more people are already experienced in doing energy initiatives in real life, mm-hmm. the better they are at playing the game, or maybe the most successful they are. And okay, then first question is that the right understanding? And then secondly, do people always also have to have some experience in gaming in order to understand the game? Should we, can you go more experience in that? Because I can, whenever you game, for instance, with students, there's like a huge difference between students who go right into the game and students who are very resistant. Mm-hmm. So that's my first. I would like to hear your reflection about that. And the second one is that at a certain point in your paper you say players bring into the game their irrationalities, assumptions and unconsciousness, and you somehow seem to hint towards that through game playing and through observing the gameplay you can also extract these irrationalities and assumptions and unconsciousness. Mm-hmm. But I was wondering whether you had already done that in these games and how you can do that, and then of course what comes out, because so far I've seen you distract in certain situations that, you know, we also I think, recognized from real life and also from gameplay. But I'm curious about that other layer, that like unconscious sort of like assumption. You know, how do you pinpoint that, or how do you indicate that, or extract that?
I'm also struggling with that. But okay, for your first question, the second part, the answer is no. Like it's like games should be accessible to everyone, and like being a gamer, it's kind of you might be more like willing or more eager to try something new, or like you are more let's say open to that. But it's not a prerequisite to learn how to play or to get into a new game. I mean, it's kind of a basic principle that it should be accessible, and you should figure out what you have to do pretty quickly. Specifically about the experienced players in terms of like actually being involved in energy initiatives, I didn't mean, or I didn't say that they were better at the game. But they were, because they were more informed about what is going on, they were actually bringing this knowledge into the game. So a lot of times, for example, like with the questions, they were they were kind of relating this to their own experience, and they were like, yeah, this is what we do, so this must be the correct answer. So, or they would start like, when they would have to deal with a specific project, they would say, oh, but the revenue for this is too small related to what it is in reality, because actually we make much more money by doing the same thing in real life. So, so it's not that they were more winners among like experienced, not experienced players, but like players with real life experience. But their actual knowledge was kind of indirectly coming into the game. So that was a bit what I meant.
So it's not really like distorting the outcomes of the game, it's more like enriching.
Yes, exactly. And then for your second question about the biases, I think this is kind of like for me it came very much in all these discussions about the like role of the municipality, for example, and the local government. That I was not expecting that people were not, let's just say, people were much less positively, like thinking much less positively about the local government than I thought in the beginning. So it was kind of, for me, it was a little bit of a surprise that they thought like that it's very bureaucratic, that they could do a lot more things if the bureaucratic processes were much faster. So, like all these things, they only came out because of the discussions, and it was something that, and that it was qualitatively different than when I had interviews, for example, before when I started my research, because of course there also people point to this kind of like barriers in development, but in a different way, and I still cannot really describe like how it is different, but I think, it's a sort of, it comes from, because it was very much tied to the actual experiences of people, so they would really refer to, also with the bribing, like there was this guy from the municipality and he was saying like, we have some old colleagues that they have like stories from the old times, but now it's not happening anymore. It's like, okay, that's a very kind of, personal way of talking about like bribing, because it relates to specific stories, but it's also like describes also a phenomenon that is there. Mm-hmm. So
it's also a bit of a reflection towards when people give an interview, they somehow filter their own story, and then the game is more like a mirror.
Yeah, because it's fun, and it's like, it's part of the kind of a very informal interaction that happens on top of the game. So.
And what happens when you confront them with that? That. Okay.
Then it becomes serious again.
I'm not saying anything.
Okay, then we'll have Sophia and Luke.
Yes, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned before that you have made people play for like 10 times.
Yeah, so 20 different sessions, yeah.
And it was who were, I was who were these players, and if the players already know each other before. Because some of the characteristics you society, and or maybe they are, or the interaction itself. I wonder if they are also related to the fact that you know already the other players from before, maybe you are more
willing
more
to, yes.
but then with people that you know you just meet there for the
Yes.
first time, and it's like more a pocket day where everybody is more in.
The people who played, they were maybe 4 different groups, I could say. There were a lot of like policymakers from like local government. There were people who are involved in energy initiatives or in like utilities companies that they are running pilots on like green energy, like sustainability projects. So people a bit like either professionally or kind of like involved in these kind of projects. There were a lot of like researchers from our department and also students from our faculty, and they were also just some random people that they were like friends of friends, that they were not really involved in any way either with planning or energy or gaming at all, and they were just random people. In some cases, of course, some players knew each other. There were very few games that everybody knew everybody. And it did have an impact on how they interacted with each other. So, of course, people who knew each other, in those cases, the gameplay was much more dynamic. I'm now also doing some kind of like I'm going through the questionnaires, so to see if there's really also like if that comes out also in the questionnaires. But I'm only now working on that, so I cannot. I mean, I can confirm it kind of like through the observation, but I'm also trying to see if if I can sustain it in a different way. That was all.
Yes, let's speak about the hypothetical situation. Let's start with chess.
Okay.
We do simultaneous chess. So one player playing with this or against 50 people.
Okay.
So this game is the first 50.
It must be very skilled.
Then another player comes in,
Uh-huh.
and he also plays against the same 50 or another 50 players. So they go across each other, stumble. Then there comes a new play in. Let's say your Prince of Arabia.
Okay.
So they have not to play against all the 50 players, against each other and with each other, also with the Prince of Arabia. Then there comes an audience in who interact with those players. Then there is your player who comes in. And there's 2 new players who try to play chess, also Prince of Arabia and York. And they start to remold the rules.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens then?
It's Friday afternoon.
They go have a beer.
Let's play.
I would say let's just try to play this chess, no? I cannot tell you what would happen. I mean, I can say that yes, they will like renegotiate the rules and they will come up with new rules, but I cannot tell you what these rules are going to be. I don't know what's going to happen.
Okay, but that's what you like. That's politics.
Yeah. Yeah, politics exists.
Maybe there are rules, like that disrupt the game. I don't know if you use dice or if there are like unforeseen.
Yeah, there are, of course, yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit related to what Luke said. To what extent it gives this game an opportunity to, well, a game is a set of rules, and to what extent is a set of rules framing the game? I mean, gameplay. As in, how much freedom you have to play it? Because in, well, a reality setting, everything can happen. I mean, we have some
Wow, not everything.
Yeah, okay, but more, I think. So how do you deal with that?
I think rules are rules. They are there and they tell you how to play the game.
Yeah.
But the point I'm trying to make is that like you have the rules, but you also have these things that happen beyond the rules.
Yeah, that's
and I think
fine.
that's also what happens in reality. Like there are rules that tell you, okay, how you have to behave and how you have to like do things. But there is always space to, on top of that, make your own rules or adjust these rules to your own kind of needs. And I think that's kind of like that becomes very evident with it, like by paying attention to these kind of processes while playing the game.
So,
Did you allow that in those sentences?
Yes.
Let's say change the rule.
Well, of course I allowed it because it was super interesting and it didn't get violent, so I wouldn't allow everything, but no, but that is a kind of like outcome, no? That like there was this certain ambiguity that I could say like no, you cannot like bribe to join a project or no, but there was this certain ambiguity that did not exactly say okay how you have to decide who your partners are going to be. So if somebody wants to have a partner just because it's like it's a beautiful girl that he wants to like attract while playing the game, it's fine. It's like people make choices based on these kind of things as well. So why not? And I really think that this ambiguity it's what enables these things to happen, and we can just observe and learn.
it makes people possibility to be themselves instead of a role in a game, right? That's how I understood it, right?
Okay, I think this is getting more and more interesting all the time. We're going to continue in the bar through the night. But let's give a big hand to everybody.